here today to listen. And so first of all, allow me to thank all of you for being here. We really appreciate your presence, and the task we're going to embark upon is a vital one for the future of our country and also for the communities in which you live. So you may be wondering, why is it that we brought everyone together? We wanted you to come together so that you could understand where we're going and then help to support a process that we will embark upon at the more grassroots level to get a feedback on the plans for the regions under discussion. But before I speak about the specific regions and the details, a bit of the details on what we're trying to do, you will see that the task today, although it may seem an urgent one, an existential one for many of the regions, it is something that we have embarked upon for quite a while, but we've been unable to accomplish. And that is largely, how do we tackle water in this country? The world today is 80% water stress. 80% of the world is water stress, fresh water stress. They don't have access to fresh water. We live in a part of the world where we have an abundance of fresh water, and but we are also below sea level. So the water is a blessing, but it's also a challenge for us, because we can use the water for so many things in Guyana that we are yet to explore. Water for drinking, it's easier. Some countries have to go through desalination, which is a very expensive process to get their water for drinking purposes. They have to move water for long distances because they don't have access. We're lucky to have a lot of fresh water. We can use water for navigational purposes. We can use water for irrigation, water for even generation of power, energy, hydropower, etc. So there is a positive side to having this abundance of water. On the negative side, it is that sometimes this water causes destruction. In the volume that we have, when it comes down to the areas in which we live and farm, and it comes down in a manner that it's unplanned and often in a very erratic manner. Our infrastructure is not designed now to handle this. So it creates a devastating consequences for people at the personal level and for their livelihoods, particularly the farmers of our country. And if it has been a challenge in the past, it will get worse in the future, because the world has changed in a major way. You've heard a lot about climate change and about the need to get to net zero emissions by 2050, to have a 50% chance of avoiding existential threat. That is a threat to life on the planet itself. Because of the concentration of greenhouse gases, we have seen sea level rises with the consequences for coastal areas. If we do not keep global temperature at 1.5, 2 degrees below pre-industrial level, by 2050. The rise in sea level could inundate many parts of the world in which people live. They would become part of the sea. It will cause such global warming in the future that many of the forests that we seek to preserve, which are important watershed for fresh water and for our rivers, those forests can just die. So we have to, even as we move forward, being an oil and gas producer, and many people recognize that now, and we're moving full speed ahead to ensure that we utilize these resources for our people. We also have to be part of a global community to address climate change. And that is why we have launched our low carbon development strategy. We did so in 2009, when many countries of the world, including the developed countries of the world, had not even prepared one. And as a consequence of that, we earned quite a bit of money, over 200 million US dollars from trading forest carbon. It was the largest per capita forest trading scheme in the world. We pioneered that, we put it to the market, and it was seen as one of the most, many countries in the world today use Guyana as an example. So we made it clear the oil and gas sector is going to move forward, but it has to move forward in tandem with us bolstering our environmental credentials and our sustainability planning. And if you have an opportunity to, I hope that all of you would read the low carbon development strategy, which was recently launched. It has expanded the traditional approach that we had in 2009 to focus on forest carbon, to now adding to that the two big areas. One about integrated water resources management, and secondly, biodiversity protection. There are other areas too, for example, how we include the blue economy or the maritime economy into our national planning process, so that even at the level of our territorial sea or exclusive economic zone, we also focus offshore on issues of sustainability. And then outside of these are the areas I just mentioned, a huge part of the LCDS, the expanded LCDS, is adaptation, so for the future. So we cannot reverse the concentration of greenhouse gases, and we are not the ones pumping out most of these greenhouse gases. I saw recently an NGO in Guyana went to the court to ask the court to stop us producing oil and gas here because we are causing climate change. Well, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I am blunt about things. You know, if something is stupid, I feel it's stupid, I call it stupid. Sounds a bit harsh, because the entire concentration of greenhouse gases so far has been pumped out by the developed world, not the developing world, not Africa or Asia or Latin America. And secondly, our emission at the national level now is a few minutes of global emission in the whole year. We're not the ones causing climate change. But we live in a global community, and we suffer because of the policies globally, and we will suffer from climate change in the future. And you yourselves have seen this in changes in weather patterns now. You've seen historically when we could get 7 inches of rainfall in a month. That's the average. We can get that in almost a single night. Now, when you have water of that volume with such an intensity coming into drainage systems, irrigation systems, the storage facilities like the conservancies, then you have an enhanced problem of dealing with it. If you can't manage it and deal with these volumes of water that accumulate in shorter periods, then you're going to constantly have an issue of flooding and loss of crops and loss of livelihoods and discomforting people. So you have to adapt to climate change. You have to build the infrastructure of the future. And today, part of that exercise that we're here to embark upon is how we build the infrastructure of the future so our country can deal with the issue of climate change. We can manage our way through it, unlike so many other countries which don't have a capability now to adapt. And so, when we built the Hope Canal, I recall for years and years and years, the people in the Mahaika, Myconia, Bari areas complained that every time the water threatens the conservancy in Region 4, we had no choice but to release the water into the Mahaika River. Or alternatively, if that conservancy dam, say, broke, it would mean major destruction on the entire East Coast and even in Georgetown. And so, for year after year, and even then we had more predictable weather, we released the water. The moment you release the water there, and the dam was threatened, the flooding started immediately because the rivers would have already been swollen with heavy rainfall. And so it caused immediate flooding, and it runs right across from Mahaika all the way to the Bari. And so we said we could not discharge enough water into the Demerara River from the other end. So the only alternative was to take the water out to the sea. So to have a release to the Atlantic. So when the water levels were threatening in the conservancy, we could take the water, release it, not into the Mahaika River, but directly into the sea. So we recall promising that we'd build the Hope Canal to do that. And then everyone had a view about the Hope Canal, how it would be a white elephant. The Guyana Association of Professional Engineers were opposed to it. They said the gradient was not steep enough to allow outflow. The Guyana Human Rights Association, imagine the Human Rights Association issued a statement against it. Go back and read the comments for that period when we started. But we persevered. We persevered. We built it in-house through the ministry. We bought the equipment. We built it ourselves. And the first person to use it were the people who were criticizing it, the last government. And it doesn't matter because it's good for our country. But without that canal today, we would have had to continue discharging water into the Mahaika River. It allowed us an essential release valve back into the Atlantic. And so we have seen this similar situation in many parts of our country, particularly the coastal areas, in regions 2, 3. Region 2 is a little bit more complicated because of the Pomeroon River there, but 3, 5, and 6. And since part of the LCDS is about adapting for the future to prevent flooding, which is our biggest challenge in a country like ours, it's not so much the hurricanes or those sorts of things. We live outside of the hurricane zone, but it's managing water. That is sea defenses basically to avoid the sea coming in, and secondly, getting water out to the Atlantic when we have large volumes. And then, of course, occasional periods of drought in some parts of the country, particularly the hinterland. These are our three biggest adaptation challenges of the future. There are lots of other adaptation challenges that we'd have to confront as part of our adapting to climate change, which is like you have to have climate resilient crops, etc. But those are things that we can work on an ongoing basis. But if we don't tackle the big issues of water management, every single crop or every 2 crops, we'd lose large volumes of our produce, and that has not only an impact on the economy, the overall economy of our country, but at the family level, often it has devastating consequences for people. Just imagine losing your crop, and if you have to grow two rice crops, it means you don't have income to take you, first of all, to go back often, because many farmers have a tight situation with working capital, they can't get back to the crop, and secondly, they save money for the family income for the rest of the year while the crop is growing. So it causes economic as well as major social problems at the family level, apart from the fact that our country loses. So there is a strong need to do so urgently. The cost of doing so is enormous. To fix our sea defenses, to keep the sea out, and these water management systems requires heavy investment. Part of the oil resources have to be spent in this manner. The rest of the many developing countries now are waiting for the developed world to provide funds for adaptation. And look at what happened at COP26. The CARICOM had a very strong position on this. Loss and damage for loss and damage, a fund for that, and a fund for adaptation. And the developed world just ignored all the demands. Imagine they're not even providing funds for mitigation options, like paying for reducing forest carbon, much less to provide funds at the scale for adaptation purposes. It's not going to happen. And so we have to fend for ourselves. Whilst we remain engaged with a global process, we in Guyana, we're not sitting on our hands. We'd have to ensure that some of our resources are utilized in this manner. So we have laid out in the LCDS, the expanded LCDS, our adaptation needs and what we're going to focus on. But we're not just laying out strategies. Like we've laid out a strategy how we want to get power prices by 50% down and to cut emissions in the sector. And we're working now on 3 big projects to do so within the next 4 or 5 years. And these are projects that already we're at the negotiation or implementation stage. We want to shift our vision, our plans in the LCDS to a more practical level now to start implementing those plans. So we're meeting here today to look at how we can manage water, especially in regions 2, the other coastal regions. 4, we have the Hope Canal that helps us here in region 4. But on the other coastal regions, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Now, we had not included region 2, but when I was on the outreach there, I met with a number of people there, and they said that they had ideas. So I asked the guys to hurriedly put together a proposal so we can listen to them too. But we have other plans, like right now we're working on a proposal to dredge the Mahaica, Myconia, Bari rivers, the mouth of the rivers, and the Pomeroon, which should all start and hopefully all be completed before the end of this year. So though we still had looked at these issues, but not in a way where we have a dedicated plan for each region. We want to shift to that now. And to do so, you're going to hear a presentation today where we hope that we have feedback from the farmers, the engineers, everyone who are here. We'd welcome a feedback on all of these issues. We want to debate these plans widely across the country. This is not the end of the issue. We're going to be taking views from people on the ground. Hopefully we can continue shoring up these plans on the ground in consultation with more farmers, and then complete the feasibility studies and start securing the financing. We are looking at sources of financing and some institutions from which we can raise the financing to get all of these implemented. So not just to talk about these, talk about the future, but start preparing for that future. This is an important part of that exercise. And it is for many people said to me, I was at Secuba Coast, and the guy said to me, oh, the gas to energy power plant will not help us because that's in region 3 and it would supply all the other regions of Guyana from region 6, 5, 4, 3, 10, but it would not come our way. And I keep saying to people, it's one country. If we earn more from cheaper gas, cheaper fuel prices, we get more businesses, we can produce fertilizer, and the treasury gets more money, then that means more money to spend in region 2. We have to stop splitting our country up by regions, etc. So this is to manage water on the coast for farmers, for all the people who live in these areas, so that not every season, because we don't know when is the rainy season now any longer, but every time you have these issues with from the time you have a rainfall of any intensity, the flooding takes place. Many of the places were not designed to handle water, like in Berbice. We have to bring water from the savannas as people open up more lands as they open up more lands now, and that's what we want people to do, more agriculture. We can't just be producing oil, we're producing food for the future. We want to be a food producing nation, not only for domestic use, but for exporting. We anticipate that the world would need that, and the wars of the future will be fought over food and water. Because the world, people may have money but not be able to access that. That's where we're getting to. So we could be a major food producer, but we're going to open up more lands. And as we open up more lands, they need drainage, they need irrigation, and then if you bring the savannas, like in some areas like Berbice, when the savanna waters that were in the savannas, now when you open up those, they now have to run through the cultivation areas that have already been established and the villages, because that's how our settlement pattern is. So water from the back has to come to the front. And the infrastructure in these villages or cultivations are not designed to handle large volumes of water now coming, new water from lands that we open up. So we have to think through all of these things as we expand, as we grow, how we manage the future. And we're gonna be spending a lot of time today just to talk to you about this. So you're gonna hear now short presentations about each of the regions, ideas, and then we'll have a full-fledged. Feel free to share your thoughts, even if they're opposed to it, because once there's a reason, can't say like some people, I'm opposed. I don't know why, but I'm opposed. That's not what we want. But if you have opposition or have a different view, and you can have a reasoned view, we want to design the best systems. And the only way you can design the best system is if you listen to people and you accommodate the views once they're sensible, logical views. And I'm sure that many people in this room have a lot of those, and across the country. So we thank you for being here to assist us with this process of preparing for the future. Our country has to prepare for that future, to avoid the catastrophe that could face many parts of this world because of climate change. So thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to a productive afternoon. I'm going to see if the President can come a bit in the afternoon so he get a chance to talk to you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President.